Eva Marie Saint was born July 4, 1924. Now 100 years old, she began her career in the early 50s. Her latest work was voice acting, remaining a screen legend through 2025. Dick Van Dyke was born December 13, 1925. Now 100 years old, he began his career in the late 40s. His latest appearance was in music videos and public performances. Active through 2025. Lee Grant was born October 31, 1925. Now 100 years old, she began her career in the late 40s. Her later work focused on directing documentaries, remaining a Hollywood icon through 2025. Mel Brooks was born June 28, 1926. Now 99, he began his career in the 1950s and remains creatively active through 2025. William Daniels was born March 31, 1927. Now 98, he began his career in the 1940s and remains remembered through appearances and voice work up to 2025. Rosemary Harris was born September 19, 1927. Now 98, she began her career in the 1940s, with her legacy honored through 2025. Marion Ross was born October 25, 1928. Now 97, she began her career in the 1950s and remains a beloved television icon through 2025. James Hong was born February 22, 1929. Now 96, he began his career in the 1950s and remains active in film and voice work through 2025. June Squibb was born November 6, 1929. Now 96, she began her career in theater, later gaining fame in film, and remains active through 2025. Robert Wagner was born February 10, 1930. Now 95 years old, he began his career in the early 1950s and remains a classic Hollywood figure through public appearances and legacy projects up to 2025. Tippi Hedren was born January 19, 1930. Now 95, she began her career as a model, rose to fame in the 1960s, and remains active as an animal rights advocate through 2025. Clint Eastwood was born May 31, 1930. Now 95, he began his career in the 1950s and continues to shape cinema as a director and producer through 2025. Robert Duvall was born January 5, 1931. Now 94, he began his career in the 1950s and remains a respected screen legend through film projects and appearances up to 2025. Barbara Eden was born August 23, 1931. Now 94, she began her career in 1951 and remains active through public appearances, memoir work, and legacy events up to 2025. William Shatner was born March 22, 1931. Now 94, he began his career in the early 1950s and remains active through acting, narration, and public appearances up to 2025. Rita Moreno was born December 11, 1931. Now 94, she began her career in the 1940s and remains active in acting, voice work, and advocacy through 2025. Joel Grey was born April 11, 1932. Now 93, he began his career in the 1950s and remains active through public appearances, photography, and cultural projects up to 2025. Ellen Burstyn was born December 7, 1932. Now 93, she began her career in the late 1950s and remains active through acting, memoirs, and public appearances up to 2025. Carol Burnett was born April 26, 1933. Now 92, she began her career in the 1950s and remains active through writing, special appearances, and honoring her legacy up to 2025. Joan Collins was born June 23, 1933. Now 92, she began her career in the 1950s and remains active through acting, writing, and public appearances up to 2025. Kim Novak was born February 13, 1933. Now 92, she began her career in the mid-1950s. Her final film was in 1991, later focusing on art and public appearances through 2025. Sophia Loren was born September 20, 1934. Now 91, she began her career in the early 1950s and remains celebrated through public appearances and legacy projects up to 2025. Judi Dench was born December 9, 1934. Now 91, she began her career in 1957 and remains active through voice work, documentaries, and public appearances up to 2025. Shirley Jones was born March 31, 1934. Now 91, she began her career in the early 1950s and remains celebrated through public appearances and legacy projects up to 2025. Shirley MacLaine was born April 24, 1934. Now 91, she began her career in 1955 and remains active through writing, acting, and public appearances up to 2025. Julie Andrews was born October 1, 1935. Now 90, she began her career as a child performer, rose to fame with Mary Poppins, and remains active through voice work and legacy projects up to 2025. Ursula Andress was born March 19, 1936. Now 89, she began her career in the 1950s, rose to fame in Dr. No, and later retired, remaining a timeless icon through 2025. Anthony Hopkins was born December 31, 1937. Now 88, he began acting in the 60s, rose to fame in The Silence of the Lambs, and remains active through film and voice work up to 2025. Jane Fonda was born December 21, 1937. Now 88, she began her career in the early 60s, rose to fame with Barbarella and Clute, and remains active in acting and activism through 2025. Jack Nicholson was born April 22, 1937. Now 88, he began acting in the late 50s, rose to fame with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and remains a legendary Hollywood icon through 2025. Morgan Freeman was born June 1, 1937. Now 88, he began his career in the 1960s, rose to fame with The Shawshank Redemption, and remains active in film and narration through 2025. Vanessa Redgrave was born January 30, 1937. Now 88, she began her career in the late 50s, rose to fame with Blow Up, and remains active through advocacy and public appearances up to 2025. Liv Ullmann was born December 16, 1938. Now 87, she began her career in the late 50s, rose to fame through Ingmar Bergman's films, and remains active as a director and cultural figure through 2025. Ian McKellen was born May 25, 1939. Now 86, he began his career in the late 50s, rose to fame with The Lord of the Rings and X-Men, and remains active in film and theater through 2025. Al Pacino was born April 25, 1930. Now 85, he began his career in the late 50s, rose to fame with The Godfather, and remains active in film and theater through 2025. Patrick Stewart was born July 13, 1940. Now 85, he began his career in the early 60s, rose to fame with Star Trek and X-Men, and remains active in theater and film through 2025. Martin Sheen was born August 3, 1940. Now 85, he began his career in the early 60s, rose to fame with Apocalypse Now, and remains active in film and activism through 2025. Linda Gray was born September 12, 1940. Now 85, she began her career in the early 60s, rose to fame with Dallas, and remains active through television appearances and public events up to 2025. James Cromwell was born January 27, 1940. Now 85, he began his career in the late 60s, rose to fame with Babe, and remains active in film and activism through 2025. Franco Nero was born November 23, 1941. Now 84, he began his career in the late 50s, rose to fame with Django, and remains active in film and public appearances through 2025. Faye Dunaway was born January 14, 1941. Now 84, she began her career in the early 60s, rose to fame with Bonnie and Clyde, and remains active through film and public appearances up to 2025. Harrison Ford was born July 13, 1942. Now 83, he began his career in the mid-60s, rose to fame with Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and remains active in film through 2025. Christopher Walken was born March 31, 1943. Now 82, he began his career in the late 50s, rose to fame with The Deer Hunter, and remains active in film and television through 2025. Robert De Niro was born August 17, 1943. Now 82, he began his career in the early 60s, rose to fame with Taxi Driver, and remains active in film through 2025. On September 25, 1944. Now 81, he began his career in the early 60s, rose to fame with Wall Street, and remains active in film and producing through 2025. 1944. Now 81, he began his career in the late 60s, rose to fame with Taxi, and remains active in film, television, and producing through 2025. John Lithgow was born October 19, 1945. Now 80, he began his career in the mid-60s, rose to fame with Third Rock from the Sun, and remains active in film and theater through 2025. Goldie Hawn was born November 21, 1945. Now 80, she began her career in the mid-60s, rose to fame with Laugh-In, and remains active through public appearances and legacy projects up to 2025. Helen Mirren was born July 26, 1945. Now 80, she began her career in the early 60s, rose to fame with The Queen, and remains active in film, television, and theater through 2025.